Great. Well, my name is Christian Kremser, and I've studied economics and philosophy at the University of Frankfurt and of Hagen. And today I'm here as an independent scholar. And well, welcome to my presentation. And let me start. Or before I start, I would like to state how delighted and grateful I'm to get the opportunity to speak in front of you. To present my ideas, and well, I consider it one of the highlights of my academic career as far. I really do. So thank you for having me. Well, my presentation is entitled, sorry for the long title, The Emperor's Great Crusade, Instrumental Reason and the Dialectic of Enlightenment, the Horus Heresy series from the perspective of philosophy of history. And let me get straight into the topic. Therefore, let me start with a quick recap of the Warhammer timeline. So, according to Warhammer 40k lore, there are 4 ages of mankind: the Age of Terror, which lasted from the 1st millennium to the 15th millennium; the Dark Age of Technology, which lasted from the 15th millennium to the 25th millennium. Then the 3rd age, the Age of Strife, which lasted from the 25th to the 30th millennium, and last but not least, the 4th age, the Age of Imperium, which started in the 31st millennium. And the latest edition of Warhammer 40k, that is the 10th edition, is set, I think, in the 32nd millennium, and thus in a special part of the Age of Imperium, also known as Dark Imperium. So, what does human society looks like in the 31st millennium? Well, the Imperium is ruled by the Emperor, seated upon the golden throne. He is worshipped as a god. There's even a whole religion that worships him, the so-called imperial cult. And to protect this religion, there's an entire imperial authority, which is the Inquisition. And well, the Imperium of mankind is described, as you could say, as a medieval crusader state in the distant future. And to be honest, it's quite dystopian future. And the Horus Heresy series tells now the story of how this grim dark future came about. And to get a short impression of this grim dark future, well, you see you have crusaders and a rotten corpse on the golden throne and fanatic priests. Yeah, and the book series now begins with the end of the Great Crusade, and the beginning of the series contrasts strongly with what is known about the 31st millennium. Why? Because the Great Crusade is described in a kinda as a period of prosperity and hope. So the emperor sets out from Terra to unite humanity after it has fallen apart in the Age of Strife, and by doing so, he builds up the new Imperium of mankind. But there are also differences to the Imperium, the Dark Imperium, in the 31st millennium. In the 31st millennium, the Imperium is a secular society. Religious practices are forbidden, they are even persecuted, and the Emperor, who is a perpetual, refuses to be worshipped as a god. And religious themes or religious topics are quite important in the Horus Heresy series. So there's even a short story dedicated to the destruction of the last church on Earth, on Terra, written by McNeill in 2009, The Last Church. What is similar? Well, the Imperium is already, in the 31st millennium, a totalitarian society. The Emperor rules as an autocrat, and during the Great Crusade, planets that have been colonized, worlds that have been colonized by humanity, incorporated into the Imperium, whether they like or not. So even if a world, a colony, a human colony, denies to be brought into the Imperium, the Space Marines are coming and force them into the Imperium with great brutality. Yeah, and there's even a story told in the first heretic. The world bearers there are forced to destroy a human society, um, which only false doing is worshipping the emperor as a god. And so yeah, you can now ask, what's the plan of the emperor? Why does the emperor act like this? The emperor has the fate of the elder in mind. If humanity wants to survive, it must stay out of the realm of the warp. So you remember the race, the species which was dominating the galaxy before mankind was the Elder, and the Elder Imperium falled because to the creation of the fourth chaos god, Slaanesh, and the Emperor has the fate of the Elder in mind, and he tries to keep humanity distant from the warp, from chaos, and faith is one, um, maybe the important gateway to warp, so it must be eradicated. And this is why the emperor must rule humanity, and this is why he cannot allow another human society exist besides the Imperium, because to make sure that religion is eradicated, he must rule humanity as a soul in its entirely. So everything else is subordinated to this purpose, which is survival, and um, everything the emperor devises, from the creation of the primarchs to the utilization of the elder webway, is a mere means to this very end. And now you can ask, why does the Horus Heresy break out? Well, the emperor, who refused to be worshipped as a god, is so uncompromising in his efforts to destroy all spiritual practices that he even punished his own son, the Brahma Loka, for his belief in the divinity of the emperor. And disappointed, Loga searches for new gods and finds them in the gods of chaos. And by doing so, he becomes the first heretic. Well, this, however, is leading up to a resurgence of religious practices. So the Horus Heresy series describes in great detail the religious conversion of protagonists. So you have Kila, who becomes a prophet. You have Sigismund, who becomes the champion of the emperor, and religious topics play a great role in the Horus Heresy series. So his renunciation, the renunciation of the emperor, then leads ultimately to the Horus Heresy, which in turn heralds a time in which humanity once again falls prey to religiosity. And this religious awakening explains why 10,000 years later, in the 30th millennium, well, the 31st millennium, the Imperium of Man has become a dystopian crusader state, which is characterized by its unconditional belief in the God Emperor. Yeah, and this backslash is quite reminiscent of certain subjects or topics from philosophy of history. And I shall begin with explaining what philosophy of history is. Well, philosophy of history emerged as a discipline during the Enlightenment. So the term was coined originally by Voltaire, and speculative philosophies of history, which were developed during the late Enlightenment, want to answer one question, one basic question, and that is, does history have a meaning? And to this end, speculative philosophies of history try to uncover a sort of regularity, laws, rhythm, underlying historical events. And they try to find out what drives history, essentially. Yeah. And this backslash in the Horus Heresy, this bitter irony, is quite reminiscent of a widespread negative view of modernity, which is often associated with Theodor Wiesengrund Adorno and Max Horkheimer, who are the founding figures of the Frankfurt School. Which also developed the critical theory in its first generation. And there are two publications in this context quite interesting and particularly important. So the first one is Eclipse of Reason, written by Horkheimer in 1947 and published in 1947. And the second one is the Dialectic of Enlightenment, written by Horkheimer together with Adorno, also in 1947. And both observe something like a rise of instrumental reason. What do they mean by that? Well, Horkheimer and Adorno start with the diagnosis that before the Enlightenment, reason could still think about its own ends. It could define own goals and own purposes. And during the Enlightenment, this changes because reason begins to criticize metaphysical systems, especially religious ones, and in doing so, it undermines the very foundation on which it stands. So, as a result, reason becomes empty and can no longer ponder its own purposes. And this empty reason is called then by Horkheimer and Adorno instrumental reason, which is a reason that can only think in terms of mere and means relationships. And the only legitimate goal in the side of such a, or from the perspective from such a empty reason is self-preservation, so survival. And because instrumental reason, because, okay, I think there is a reason missing, I'm sorry for that. Because instrumental reason can no longer evaluate ends, it can be corrupted. And this is exactly what Horkheimer and Adorno believed they were able to observe in their time. So this rise of instrumental reason, they thought, led to a domination over external and internal nature of man, and finally led to the institutionalized domination of people over people. Horkheimer and Adorno thought that instrumental reason developed a character of domination, which led to an upswing in methodology, the return of enlightened civilization to barbarianism in reality, which manifests itself in different ways in their time. So what we are talking about, of course, we are talking about the Holocaust. And they thought both they could trace the rise of fascism and also monopolistic capitalism back to this development. Yeah, and Horkheimer and Adorno also see a backslash in history, and they call this backslash the Dialectic of Enlightenment. Well, so long story short, the Horus Heresy series now shares much of this from my point of view. So the instrumental thinking of the emperor merely orientated towards survival, and the resulting fight against religion leads to the opposite of what he intended to do. Instead of looking forward to a golden future, humanity falls back into barbarianism. So he tried to eradicate religion, and instead he ended up with worshipped as a god. And therefore the Horus Heresy series can be, from my point of view, understood as a certain form of broader criticism of modernity. And it seems to be a critique of the hubris that can seize instrumental reason. And that's it. The end at last. Thank you very much for your attention. And do you have any questions?